The Lamp That Burns All Night by KA Abbas. The clusters of graceful palms reflected deep in the placid expanse of the backwaters. It was silhouetted inky black against the sunset sky, aflame with clouds that were the color of gold and fire and blood. A slow breeze caused gentle ripples in the otherwise mirror-like perfection of the inland sea. The distant melody of a fisherman's flute, now a clear, shrill, bird-like noise, now a mere whisper, seemed to enhance rather than shatter the all-pervading stillness. My boatman, too, seemed caught by the mood of the evening and stopped paddling as the long, slim boat negotiated a curve around a triangular projection. It glided silently under the overhanging palms, breaking through the delicate filigreed pattern of their reflection in the water. Soon we were out in the open again, but the boatman was silent, his oars lying idle by his side. The boat swayed gently as the ripples in the water. The boat swayed gently with the ripples in the water. Otherwise, it was practically stationary. It was too peaceful, too beautiful to be spoilt by any sound or movement. The boat, as well as the two men in it, was perfectly still. We were not going anywhere. Time itself seemed to have come to a stop. I looked back. The town of Quilon, the white tops of its buildings barely visible above the palm-fringed coastline, was far, far away, and the whisper of a train whistle came from as if another world. Here, where I was in a puny, primitive boat, poised precariously on the gentle heaving breast of the ocean, life was elemental, primeval. Here the water was deep, very deep. The blue sky overhead was high, very high. The dark, little semi-naked boatmen might have been from another century, from another age altogether. And the earth was young, and man had just learned to build boats and light a fire by striking a flintstone. The orange ball of the sun hesitated tremulously on the edge of the sea, and then gracefully sank, leaving its rays for a brief moment to light up the western horizon and to touch the soft curves of the sea with burnished silver. But the glory of the sunset was short-lived, and then, like a pall of death, darkness enveloped the earth and the sky. I felt oppressed by the gloom and was about to suggest that the boatmen turn back to Quilon, back from that atmosphere and mood of ancient fantasy to civilization and the present times, when something arrested my attention, and the words I was about to utter froze on my lips. It was a pinpoint of light, moving in the distance like a ghost lantern gliding on the water. I was fascinated, intrigued, and also somewhat frightened by the curious phenomenon. "What is that?" I asked the boatman, at last breaking the silence. I thought it was odd. He did not look back as he replied, with the merest suspicion of a tremor in his voice. "We shall soon see, Sahib." A man of uncertain age, he spoke better English than one would expect from a boatman, even in Travancore. Why, I had found a surprising high percentage of literacy. It was indeed his fluency of speech and a certain intriguing, if not altogether engaging, gravity of expression, which had prompted me to choose his rickety craft rather than one of the noisy, crowded launches or the more dependable, bigger boats that were lined up at the jetty. All through our leisurely cruise around the jigsaw puzzle of the backwaters, he had spoken very little, and that had been a relief. For a more loquacious guide would have spoiled the peace of the evening by rattling off unnecessary information about the various landmarks we had just passed. I was definitely not afflicted with the average tourist's craze for finding out and noting down names of every creek and island and lighthouse and picturesque hamlet that we passed on the way. I was out to savor the peace and beauty of these far-famed backwaters. And when I tired of the picture postcard beauty of the landscape, I could look at the weather-beaten, leathery face of the boatman and speculate what kind of a life he lived, what thoughts he thought, what emotions he felt, and what had caused those deeply etched lines that gave his face a look of mocking gloom, as if he had seen through life and found it empty and without meaning. You shall soon see, Sahib, he said, and without another word, had begun to paddle softly towards the light. After what appeared to be infinite suspense, the form of a boat detached itself from the darkness. There was someone, a woman perhaps, in the boat, and it was she who was holding a lantern in her hand. Where she was going at that dark hour and why? Whither was she going at that dark hour and why? Was she real or a figment of my imagination and conjured out of the darkness? I noticed that the boatman took care not to draw too near to the woman's boat, but kept his distance, paddling very softly, almost inaudibly, so that we remained hidden in the dark. She did not see us, though I could now clearly see the outline of her slim figure in the circle of light that fell from her lantern. Her boat slowed down as it neared the top of a submerged stump of tree, which, like some of the others I'd seen that day, stood out of the water like a warning finger raised to the sky. Tied to the stump of tree was another lantern. The woman proceeded to fill it with kerosene oil and then struck a match to light it up. As the lantern on that improvised lighthouse came to life, I could see her face. I still remember it vividly, for it was a face one cannot easily forget. It provided a strange, inexplicable contrast between physical features and facial expression. It was pale, drawn, haggard, cheeks sunken into hollows, hair bedraggled. The hand with which she raised the wick of the lantern was thin and bony and bloodless. But in her big and undoubtedly beautiful eyes was an expression of infinite tenderness, a consecrated longing for someone or something. And the face was lit up as if by an inner flame that shone through that pale, almost transparent skin of hers with selfless devotion. A smiling, happy face, and the light in her eyes was the light of hope. It was the kind of expression that you may expect to see on the face of a nun, or a saint, or a woman in love, waiting in hope for a lover's return. And so in this case, she seemed to be, for as her boat turned around and went back in the direction of the little island, where the outline of some fishermen's huts could be seen dimly in the starlight, I heard her thin, reedy voice raised in a song, a plaintive, haunting melody, strange and yet familiar, which I seem to have heard before elsewhere, but not in that dialect of Malayali boatmen. What is she singing? I asked the boatman. It is a song of our people, the song that the woman sings while she waits for her man, he replied. Ah, so that was why she had rowed up to the tree to light the lantern, so that her husband or lover would not lose his way in the dark. A touching scene, but not by any means a strange phenomenon. And will he come tonight? I asked to make sure. The boatman's voice, as it came to me out of the dark, was heavy with a strange weariness, and he replied, not colloquially, in correct English, no, sir, he will not come tonight or any night. He is dead. He has been dead for many years. And the woman, I exclaimed in utter surprise, doesn't she know that he is dead? That he will never come back? He knows, maybe, but she will not believe. She waits and hopes. And every night for many years she comes and lights this lantern to guide a boat that will never come. I spoke not to him, but to myself, as the significance of the strange human drama I had just seen enacted dawned upon me. My novelist instinct was now thoroughly aroused, and by unremitting questioning, I coaxed the whole story out, bit by bit, from that reticent boatman. It was a story of the heroism of humble people. In 1942, when the revolutionary storm was raging all over the country, even in the distant backwaters of Travancore, it was a story of the heroism of humble people. In 1942, when the revolutionary storm was raging all over the country, even the backwaters of Travancore became agitated. The prevalent but latent bitterness against the hated autocratic regime of the state found dramatic expression in a series of demonstrations on the part of students, workers, and peasants. The boatmen of Quilon, several thousand strong, went on strike and for 2 weeks successfully resisted the coercion and persecution by the state police and were determined to stand by their demands, even if the backwaters become red with our blood. That's quite a picturesque though grim phrase, I commented when I listened to the simple-minded boatman. Where did you hear it? It was spoken by him, sir, in the meeting of the boatmen. Krishna, that was his name. A boatman and the son of a boatman. But he had been to school and lived in Trivandrum and read many books and listened to the speeches of many leaders. He was a good, strong young fellow. He could swim the 3 miles from Quilon jetty to this island here to see his Radha. Krishna and Radha. Isn't that too much of a romantic coincidence? The boatman was stumped by the word coincidence. But when I explained that such things do not always happen in real life, he said, of course, sir, her name was not Radha, but that is what he liked to call her. Radha and Krishna. Krishna and Radha. They were a good-looking pair. And all the boatmen were glad, as if they were going to be married. And he paused and corrected himself. That is, all those except who wanted Radha for themselves. Then accountably he lapsed into silence, and I had to provide a cue. Miss Radha, she must have been very beautiful 8 years ago. A sigh of recollection escaped his lips as he softly paddled the boat. More than beautiful, sir. She was fairer than any other girl in these parts, tall and straight like a palm, and her skin was smooth, shiny like a fish, and her eyes, in her deep black eyes, was all the beauty of the backwaters. We were moving away from the main story and getting bogged in poetic descriptions, but I wanted the dramatic details. So I had to bring the conversation back into the proper channel with the usual. And what happened then? After that speech of his, there was a warrant for his arrest. The police were after him. They spread their net far and wide, but he went into hiding and was not caught. The police did not know, but the boatmen and the fishermen did. Every night he swam through the dark waters to the island there to meet his Radha. And everyone laughed at the police and were happy at Krishna's daring, except those, as I said, who were jealous of him. I had to puncture the silence again with my, what happened then? Came the dark nights without the moon, and a light appeared in the middle of the backwaters, just as you have seen it today, to guide the daring Krishna as he swam on his way to meet his girl. Night after night, as soon as it was dark, Radha would slip into a boat and row to the spot to light the lantern, just as she did today. As I looked back at the lantern out there in the middle, I could almost hear the steady swish of water as the strong arm Krishna negotiated the dark waters guided by the life-saving pinpoint of light. And what happened then? From the depths of the boatman's soul, as it were, came his voice. One night, the lantern was duly lit, but it was blown out, and there was no light to guide Krishna when he came swimming towards the island. What happened? Was there a storm? You might say there was a storm, sir, but it was in the heart of an evil-minded man. He turned traitor to his people and caused the death of his friend by blowing out the lantern. But why? Why would a man do such a stupid, terrible thing? He thought it was love, his love for Radha. The desire for her was strong in him, so it was really like madness. And he knew he had no chance as long as Krishna was alive. He killed his friend, surely as if he had strangled him with his own hands. What he did not know was that he had no chance even after Krishna was dead. We were now nearing the Quilon jetty, and I was anxious to hear the end of the story and the rounding up of all the principal characters. And so Krishna drowned. What happened then? The strike was broken after Krishna's death. And Radha, how did she take her lover's death? She did not believe he drowned, you see. The body was never found, so she still waits and lights that lantern every night for his return. They say she has gone mad. And that traitor, that fellow who caused Krishna's death, betrayed his people and their cause for their freedom, what happened to him? There was no reply from the boatman, who sat grimly silent, hunched up. No reply except the steady, sigh-like swish of his oars. I could almost hear his guilt, his heartbeat, the water gently lapping against the side of the boat, and the not-so-distant shrill whistle of the train that would take me away from Quilon, away from these enchanted backwaters, consecrated by the blood of the martyred Krishna, and illuminated by Radha's little lantern, which shone out of the surrounding gloom, the symbol of eternal hope.